Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Seth.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right, we are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right. I want to start this off with saying thanks to Doug.
Producer Doug, use his name correctly.
Wait, but we had the Rogue episode come out a while ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
By the time this episode comes out.
Last week would have been He-Man.
Yeah, so I want to thank Producer Doug, or remind him that we finally accomplished his objective. He heart reacted the Rogue episode that came out a couple of weeks ago, and he was very happy. He made a post himself. Let me read his post. He said, "Sometimes dreams come true. When I was first approached, squatting in what was the future law office of Classic Gaming and Brothers, I had one vision of a classic game. This was that game, and that was Rogue. It only took us 6 years to record an episode that the producer requested us to record. So yeah, glad that you liked it, Producer Doug, and maybe we'll get to that Golden Sun episode. But if we release it within the next 6 years, we would be ahead of schedule. So Zach, how have you been?
I've been well, Seth. How have you been?
Good. I've been well as well.
Well as well? Well, all's
yes.
well that ends well?
I understand that you may be coming on to Still Loading soon too.
Yes, I am. I don't think it's next month. It's either March or May. I need to double check with Josh.
So great. So you can listen to probably by this time the episode that I'm on. And
yes.
If you're listening to this episode in the future, maybe there's an episode that Zach's on.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, in any case, it's always be sure to subscribe to Still Loading. Josh is a great podcaster.
He is. I like my conversations with him. I think they are pretty good. So Zach, what have you recently been playing?
Recently, I've been playing Iron Lung, which was released in 2022, developed by David Szymanski, and it is a game that I also beat. So cue the Zach Beats a Game music. To be fair, Iron Lung takes about an hour to play, so it's not necessarily an incredibly long game. In fact, if you really want to play it, you can probably beat it in a sitting, as I did, unless it scares you, because it is a scary game. Iron Lung is set in a dystopic future following a period known as the Quiet Rapture, when all of the stars and planets suddenly vanished. The only stars and light left are the dwindling remnants of the light that is still traveling through space, referred to as the ghost light. Some people have survived thanks to space stations. Basically, the space stations were orbiting planets, then the planets vanished. Now the space stations are just floating in space by themselves. These stations are now the sole remnants of humanity. You play as an unnamed convict who is sent down to explore the mysterious asteroid AT5, which was recently discovered. One thing that was unique about the asteroid when they discovered it is that it has an ocean on it. An ocean made of blood. Human blood.
Oh, that's scary.
You pilot a one-man submarine called the SM-13, colloquially known as the Iron Lung, due to its appearance, and you are tasked with taking pictures of points of interest. You're not really told why you're doing this. You're told, however, that you must go to these points of interest, take photos, go to the next point. Because of the pressure of the blood ocean at the depths that you are traveling in, you don't have access to the porthole, and thus you are piloting your ship virtually blind. Your only guide is the XY coordinates of your ship that are provided on the nav tool. There is a stained map that contains a grid, and stained as in it has like coffee stains or maybe blood stains on it. They are just kind of brown, nondescript stains. The map does contain a grid though, so you can vaguely guess where you are using the XY coordinates. There's also a dial used to direct your ship in the cardinal direction, and a camera that slowly takes black and white photos of the objects around you, one picture at a time. So your job is to go to these points of interest, essentially blind feeling your way around the blood ocean and take photos. And that's it. It's a short game, but it's incredibly well crafted and designed, and it is a terrifying game. It builds a lot of tension, and it does a really good job at making this tension stay with you. I think it's a combination of the world building, the simple design, and the overall aesthetic. You truly feel that you are trapped in the bottom of this ocean in this tiny submarine where nothing is around you and no one can hear you. If you don't have thalassophobia, which is the fear of large bodies of liquid, I don't want to say large bodies of water because the ocean that you're in it's not water. But if you don't have thalassophobia, if you don't have any real triggers when it comes to like confined spaces, then I think if you don't have these things, you might like Iron Lung if you're in for a good scare. I definitely recommend it as just a general spooky game. You don't need to even play it during spooky season. It's a game that just is fun and spooky to play. I played the game though because the day after I played the game for the first time, I went to go see the movie Iron Lung, which came out in theaters just a few weeks ago. It was directed and starring Markiplier, aka Mark Fishback. It was his first feature film. I'm not that big of a Markiplier fan. I don't watch his YouTube channel. I haven't watched his YouTube channel since I was in college about 10 or so years ago. But I was interested in how a YouTuber who really doesn't have a lot of experience in feature films would do for a first commercial film, especially based on a game that is very distinct in terms of its tone and its structure. What also intrigued me was that Dave Szymanski, the creator of the game, was one of the people that produced the movie and helped with it. So it went in with really no expectations. I didn't know what to expect, though I left the movie really enjoying it. I think Markiplier did a great job capturing the vibe of the game. The set design that they used for the SM-13 is nearly identical to the actual submarine from the game, albeit less pixelated because Iron Lung, the video game, uses kind of a PS1 aesthetic to it in terms of blocky graphics. But yeah, the movie was pretty good. A little long. It's a 2-hour long movie for an hour-long game, but I do think that the movie was very interesting in what they did as an adaptation. Seth, what about you? What have you been recently playing?
Well, recently I was playing Stronghold Definitive Edition by Firefly Studios.
I was playing that
released
recently
back
too.
in 2023. You were playing it recently, and I asked when you were playing it recently. I don't know if it got cut for length, but I asked you if you did the wolf strategy, and you said no. You just usually use the pitch and the regular folk strategy. You didn't concentrate on the wolf strategy. And I said that I can remember. I said the wolf strategy is a superior strategy, and you should always go with the wolf strategy. And that wolf strategy is just putting a bunch of rabid wolf war dogs outside of your castle. And so I was like thinking about that strategy, and I was like, I think I want to like do that strategy. So I booted up Stronghold Definitive Edition, built up a map, built up the castle, and then I laid down the wolves. And I didn't lay down one wolf, 10 wolves, laid down about 30 some odd wolves. And then, let me tell you though, the strategy's not that great. The main reason for the strategy being bad is that the wolves they just kill indiscriminately. So yes, they are pretty effective in waves against your enemy to repel pretty much any force. I should have dialed up the forces though in that game that I was playing to see like what the max of just had the enemy bring like the whole full tilt of like what they could bring and see how the wolves stacked up. But wolves just kind of kill everything. They know how to climb stairs, and eventually my king, who thought he was the wolf king, was overrun by wolves, and the wolves took over his kingdom, which, to be fair, they would probably manage the kingdom better since by the time that the wolves took over, there was no food left in the kingdom and no way to get it because the wolves were outside everywhere. And so eventually it was very much like I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me kind of Rorschach moment. Yeah, very Rorschach moment where my king was like, oh no, and then he died. And then they showed the splash screen for my defeat, and it was just wolves. A very apt ending for my wolf king.
I did like watching Seth streamed himself, and it was fun watching the army of wolves, or I guess pack of wolves would be more accurate, charge at the enemy and then turn around and charge at Seth.
Yes, they did sit pretty far away for a little while, which I was hoping would have been a good time. What I should have done was had like 2 tiers of wolves. I feel like if I had like a self-sufficient city inside a wall, and then a wolf killing zone, and then like a no man's land kind of thing, and funneled everybody through the no man's land, then it would have been a more effective strategy, at least for the survival of my king and civilians who were utterly annihilated by wolves. It's not a good strategy. It's a fun strategy. It's fun.
It is a fun strategy. Yeah.
It's fun. It's hilarious to watch. It is pure chaos, but doesn't always end up well for anyone but the wolves.
Right. To get into today's episode, we're going to be diving into a game that is popular and relevant. It is a game that actually...
Popular.
It is popular. It is a game that came out actually next month. It would be 20 years since it was released. March 20th of this year marks 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, since the release of The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion.
And to think when we started this podcast, it wasn't even old enough to drive.
I know.
And now it's almost old enough to drink.
That's true. What better way to celebrate the game than talk about it? It's actually fun because not only has it been over almost 20 years since the release of Oblivion, it's been over 300 episodes since the last time we talked about the Elder Scrolls, because we did an Elder Scrolls Morrowind episode back in episode 23.
Yeah.
And this is episode 324.
Which we're so close to having exactly 300 episodes away. Why'd we have to do an episode on what's nuts?
He-Man.
He-Man, yeah, sure.
But I guess if I'm doing the Classic Gaming Brothers math correctly, I guess that means we'll cover Skyrim around episode 620.
Probably. Or maybe we'll cover Daggerfall.
As a refresher, Oblivion is part of the long-running Elder Scrolls series. Elder Scrolls are a series of games set in the fictional land of Tamriel. The original game, The Elder Scrolls Arena, was developed in 1994 for MS-DOS. Arena is notably a pretty huge game, both in terms of its success, but also in terms of its size, as in the map that you explore. It is a massive open world that players can explore, and there are procedurally generated dungeons that you can access. When Arena came out, it would spread through word of mouth. Primarily people played the game, liked it, and told their friends. Initially, the numbers of copies that sold were only about 3,000 units. It was a very small batch of people that were initially buying the game for a couple of reasons. One was it's kind of a niche thing, a medieval role-playing game in the 90s. But the other thing was that people were kind of confused by the name because they thought it was like a gladiator game of some sort, I think, because the name is Arena and it shows people on the cover in an arena, but it's like a open world adventure game. But as more and more people played and talked about it, the numbers of sales would increase. 3,000 units sold quickly became 90,000 units sold by 1994, and then a total of 120,000 units sold by 1996. A popular game that sells well means a sequel must be made, so The Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall would release in 1996. Daggerfall would shrink the size of the region you get to explore, so in Arena you can actually explore all of Tamriel. In Daggerfall you can only explore High Rocker and Hammerfell, which are two provinces of Tamriel. However, Daggerfall being a bit more advanced in terms of the technology that went into it meant that even though you can only explore two regions, these regions consist of over 15,000 different cities, towns, villages, and dungeons, with a vast variety of NPCs that you can talk to and engage with.
I mean, to be fair, it's Daggerfall, so they're not very deep in the engagement, but there's a lot that you could certainly talk to.
Yes.
Daggerfall sold even better than Arena, with around 700,000 units in total being sold by 2000. Morrowind would quickly follow in 2002, selling upwards to 4 billion copies by August 2005. Morrowind was my first exposure to the Elder Scrolls series, and I went on to play all the series afterwards. We talked a little bit about it in the Morrowind episode, but I did like the sense of freedom that came with Morrowind, where you could just, play a thief and steal everything, including the pillow from some random person. And that sense of freedom continues on in Morrowind and Oblivion and Skyrim. Needless to say, Morrowind proved that Elder Scrolls was a money-making franchise. So it would be just, of course, they would become another game. And then there would be another one, and then they would stop.
Yeah, true.
It had to be, they're not even live service game. They're not it makes sense why Grand Theft Auto stopped, because they did a Grand Theft Auto 5 and they made more money online and they didn't have to make any, net new things. Not the case for either Skyrim or Fallout. They literally just were we're just going to take a pause.
76 is the live service thing, but
fair, but it's not as successful as Grand Theft Auto 5.
Oh, no, I never said that. I just said it's also a live service game.
It is, to be fair. But if you're really into Elder Scrolls, there's not really an experience like that for Elder Scrolls. Well, was there Elder Scrolls Online?
There was, but it's not very good.
Well, neither is Fallout 76, so...
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, arguably, Bethesda games are great, but saying they are quality is an entirely different story, since they're usually full of jank. However, Oblivion would go on to be developed by Bethesda Game Studios back in 2006, And it was, in fact, that game is the reason why I killed a PC and got a new one.
Oh,
because,
yeah. I remember that.
I could not play it. At the time, Bethesda games were like my benchmark to whether or not I needed to buy a new computer, because I would be like, oh, can't play Oblivion, gotta get a new one. And I was really excited about playing Oblivion. And so I was really sad that I had to wait to get a new computer, which is hard to do when you're poor. Now, the game of Oblivion, though, the development went way back to 2002. Essentially, after the release of Morrowind, in 2002, Bethesda decided to immediately go into figuring out what their idea for their next game was going to be. Rumors began to circulate that they were in production of a game around 2004, after an email from Bethesda leaked indicating that they were looking for new staff, which, I mean, it's hard to be quiet about hiring people since you need to publicly post their jobs. In the email, it detailed that they were looking for someone who was able to help with the bleeding edge of RPG development for the PC and future generation consoles, and also requested that anyone applying have the knowledge of the Elder Scrolls franchise. Did they build out the creation kit with Oblivion that is still used today?
So the creation kit is like forked off of the code base for Fallout 3, which is based in the game Byrgenwerth engine, which was used to create Morrowind, Oblivion, and Fallout 3. The creation engine is just a version of the game Byrgenwerth engine, which was used for Morrowind back in 2002.
And so then if you wonder why things at Bethesda are janky, just know that they're patching and shoestringing an engine along because it just has that feeling.
The Bethesda engine is so janky. The creation engine and game Byrgenwerth. It's so janky because, for those who don't know, a majority of things in Bethesda games that you interact with are just NPCs.
Oh, yeah.
That have like either no stats or modified stats.
Yeah.
For example, a chest is an NPC. A mannequin is an NPC.
Yeah, because a chest you're just pickpocketing essentially.
Yes, you're just pickpocketing it. A mannequin is just a non-moving NPC, and sometimes the games glitch and they do move, and it's terrifying because sometimes the logic gets put in the wrong place.
Yeah. I mean, but game developers have been doing silly stuff like that, because wasn't the train in Half-Life just a man's hat?
No, that's Fallout.
Oh, that's Fallout.
Fallout 3, the train is literally a hat.
That's right.
And it's a man
so
running.
Maybe it is just Bethesda. It's just Bethesda where they just use NPCs for everything. Yeah, they're a silly group of people.
They're silly goobers over there.
They are silly goobers. Bethesda would attempt to defray push back against the rumors that they are building a new game while simultaneously trying to staff for building a new game. And eventually the rumors were finally confirmed when they announced Fallout 3, and a new Elder Scrolls title was in development, which in September of 2004, Bethesda officially announced that the name of the game would be Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, which is fun. And also, like, Fallout 3 was like a huge deal. I would say, like, Oblivion was a big deal in the fantasy RPG. Like, the person who loves fantasy RPGs, Oblivion was a huge deal. Fallout 3, though, was like modernizing a franchise to the modern age. Like, Morrowind to Oblivion has some big gains in like graphics and like interactions and like gameplay, but like it's nothing compared to like going from Fallout 2 to Fallout 3.
Yeah.
So from like 2000 to 2010, Bethesda was just like banging on all cylinders.
In terms of the development, game designer Todd Howard had wanted to create what he felt would be the quintessential RPG of the next generation. He wanted the game to both look and play great. The Bethesda team also wanted to make the game stand out story-wise. One of these would be the fact that, unlike in most RPG games, you don't play as a chosen one in Oblivion. Your goal is actually to find the chosen one who is out there in the world. And that is kind of a unique twist on Oblivion in terms of what it is. Considering in Skyrim, they immediately go back to that standard of you playing as the chosen one because you play as the Dovahkiin. So it's cool that they at least did it once where they subverted the expectation. During development, Bethesda wanted their focus to be on the story, the characters, and the quests. They wanted to make their game have a believable artificial intelligence, and they did this by creating what's called the Radiant Radiant AI tool. Radiant AI is Bethesda's proprietary AI code that allows NPCs to interact with each other, player characters, and the environment in a realistic way by giving them dynamic reactions to their environments. NPCs are typically given generalized goals, so their goal might be in location and eat food at time. And the reason these goals are generalized is so that the AI achieves the goal any way it can. So if the AI happens to have gold in its pocket, well, it might just go buy the food and go to the location and eat it there. If the NPC's nowhere near that location, they might have to get to that location, and that might take them some time. And they might have to get there fast, so they might need to steal a horse. Also, if the NPC doesn't have any money, they might need to steal the food, because the NPC will achieve that goal the best way it can. And every NPC is given different goals, but some NPCs will be given the same goal, but different stats that allow them to do the goal in different ways, making it feel more believable in how the NPCs are reacting in the environment. And I think that's fun. I like the idea of like, I need to get this item, I need to get it now.
It was very, I think before that, it was very difficult to find an RPG game where even the people didn't move around, let alone like have a schedule that they kept. And so it's kind of a novel concept to be like, I need to figure out what this person's schedule is, and I need to wait until they get to a location that I know is in their schedule. Like, I know they're going to go to the tavern, or I know they're going to go to sleep at this time or whatever, and I need to like rob them or do something, be like whatever that was, the Black Hand.
Oh, yeah.
Be like, I got to go kill them when they're sleeping and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you have to just watch it. So I think that was novel. I think obviously as like intelligence in games, algorithms have gotten more advanced, the Radiant system seems a little antiquated now.
Yeah, it can, I think. People like Rockstar have done a good job with creating AI that feels, at least in like Grand Theft Auto 5, pretty realistic. However, in comparison with Outer Worlds, when I was playing that recently, Outer Worlds 2, I didn't find the AI as dynamic as I would like. Like, they interact with each other, they interact and stuff, but
they don't really go anywhere.
Exactly. They just kind of all stand in one place.
They're usually in their same place. But then, like, you have to step back and think about what is each of the games, what are they doing?
Right.
Like, is a Fallout game or Oblivion game or Elder Scrolls game I know that Outer Worlds was trying to be like Fallout.
Yeah.
But only, I think, in the humor. It definitely feels different. Todd Howard in one of his statements said that like he really likes, for Bethesda games specifically, to have a sense of wonder and where you could live a life somewhere else. I think especially the Elder Scrolls games do that very well. Some of the Elder Scrolls games do it better than others. Arguably, I would say Morrowind probably does a better job than Oblivion when it comes to giving you that sense of wonder. But Oblivion still helps with that. I don't have that sense of wonder when I'm playing Outer Worlds. It's kind of like I'm going through a structured story.
Yeah.
To be fair, like some of the Bethesda games, you don't know what you need to do, let alone in doing whatever you're doing it could be right. It could also be wrong, but like there's no that's one of the things that I really like about a lot of the Elder Scroll games is that there's no pressure to do something. And if you're like, I think, whatever, the main plot is happening, I don't really have to engage with it. As the games developed, the main plot became more important, and they kind of like gave you a sense of urgency. But like, if you're like, I think I want to be a arch wizard,
right?
You could go do that.
Now, Bethesda also wanted to work on improving the aesthetics of this new game, especially based on how Morrowind looked. Now, Morrowind's not a bad-looking game, but compared to Oblivion, it is kind of a bad-looking game.
It is. And compared to Oblivion Remastered, it is bad looking.
But some of the ways that they worked to improve the aesthetics Oblivion from Morrowind was by updating the physics engine. For example, they implemented the Havoc physics engine, which allowed for more realistic physics. They also used better lighting and shader routines that allowed for the lighting to look better. They also implemented a procedural generation tool to create the terrain, allowing for the terrain to feel dynamic. And another cool thing was the terrain used erosion techniques to give waterways and other parts of the landscape more realistic, kind of crafted scraggly appearance as opposed to the terrain in Morrowind, which was very smooth. Another improvement was, of course, the draw distance, the view distance. Instead of fog being utilized to hide the fact that you can't really see as far into the distance as you would like on Morrowind, Oblivion would actually show you the mountain ranges that you could go to, or the towns off in the distance that you could explore. And this allowed the player to kind of have a bit more of a vastness to the area they wanted to explore. Music in the game would be composed by Jeremy Soule, who listeners of our Phil episode might remember that name. He also composed the music for the Harry Potter PC games. And voice actors such as Linda Carter, Sean Bean, Terrence Stamp, and Patrick Stewart were all cast in different roles into the game.
I want to talk about Patrick Stewart real quick. This was like the first real, for me, was like the first real star power in a game. Like recognizable. Like for me, it was like, oh, that's Patrick Stewart's voice, and I know who he is.
I mean, and looking back at like Sean Bean, like
yeah,
Linda Carter too, arguably. I mean, she's Wonder Woman.
Yes. I think for me, Patrick Stewart has such a iconic voice.
Yes.
When Patrick Stewart talks, there's only one person that sounds like Patrick Stewart, and that's Patrick Stewart.
Find the last of my blood and close shut the marble jaws of Oblivion.
Patrick Stewart talks. You listen.
Everybody listens, except for Riker. Now, development on the game took some time initially. Initially, it was projected to be ready for release with the Xbox 360 in November of 2005. The game would be delayed. The initial delay was controversial. Retailers had already been accepting pre-orders when the delay was announced, and it also didn't help the publisher, Take-Two Interactive, was already dealing with the controversy of the hot coffee mod in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, causing a major dip in their earnings. To be young again. The hot coffee mod and delay in video game released. And if it was today, it would have been released in early access and it would have been full of bugs. Yep. Yeah. And they would have been like, they would have just released it and been like, oh, that's what we got. Maybe we'll fix it. An early version of the game was shown at E3 2005. This version was mostly complete, but still needed some refinement and details. For example, something missing was clutter added into the game to make areas seem more realistic and lived in. A 10-second preview would be shown at E3 pre-show conference, and then a 25-minute demo would be showcased during the actual expo. Another build, even closer to being final, was displayed at this Consumer Electronics Show, or CES, at Microsoft's press tent. The anticipation for Oblivion was reaching a fever pitch. It had won awards at E3 like RPG Game of the Show and Best Overall Game of E3 2005. And this was before it shipped.
This was before it was finished. These were the pre-release versions that were missing stuff.
Yes, they were winning awards before they even shipped. That's how excited people were. Pete Hines, vice president of marketing and PR at Bethesda at the time, was apparently quoted saying, "People were expecting the game to cure blindness and heal the sick," which sounds like somebody who's in charge of PR would say. Let's temper these expectations, folks. And it would go gold on March 2nd, 2006, and released for Microsoft Windows and Xbox 360 on March 21st, 2006. The game shipped out on DVD DL disc, allowing people to not worry about swapping out CD-ROMs to play it as long as they had a DVD-ROM drive.
In terms of the story, Oblivion, and I'm not going to go into the full story of Oblivion. It's a very complex game because it is a complex RPG, but I'll go through the opening beats.
You start as a prisoner.
Oblivion is set in the Third Era, 6 years after Morrowind. It is not considered a direct sequel to Morrowind. Just for time placement, it is 6 years after the events. The game primarily is set in Cyrodiil, a province in the land of Tamriel. You play as a character who wakes up in a prison cell. You are soon greeted by Emperor Uriel Septim VII, who is voiced by Patrick Stewart, and avoiding assassins. Uriel's avoiding assassins. I don't know if Patrick Stewart is avoiding assassins. The Emperor decides to talk to the random prisoner and pardon you, and sends you on a quest to take the Amulet of Kings and give it to Joffrey, the Grand Master of the Imperial Bodyguards, called the Blades. The Emperor is then swiftly assassinated. Once out of the prison, the world is truly your oyster. Like other Elder Scrolls games, the world is an open world that allows you to take on different quests at your leisure. While the main storyline is always there, you can traverse the land of Cyrodiil and take on different quests before you accomplish the main goal of the game, the main quest line. There are tons of different quests, dungeons, and areas to explore, as well as side quests from people who will give them to you. The game is an action role-playing game where you control a character that you customize and design. You decide their race, gender, abilities, and appearance. You can have a character that is more combat-heavy, more of a magic user, more stealthy. As you play through the game, your skills level up and you can assign points to different skill sets. There are lockpicks you can pick up, books to read, spells to learn, weapons to wield, and so on and so forth. In your quest, you fight different enemies ranging from just people that you meet, but also fantasy creatures like goblins and elves and all the like that you would imagine from a fantasy story.
What's your favorite race to play as?
I like the dark elves.
There's dark elves, and then aren't there high elves too, or something?
The high elves, yeah. I like playing as I've played, I think, as dark elf. Sometimes I play as Bretons,
yes,
because they're British.
Just as a reminder for folks, since I don't think we're actually going to talk about it, there are 10 playable races within Oblivion. There is the Altmer, the Argonian, the Bosmer, the Breton, the Dunmer, which is the Dark Elf, Imperial, Khajiit, Nord, Orzamir, and Redguard. And I have primarily played as the Khajiits and Argonian.
That's fun. I like Argonians. I think I played as an Argonian in one of my Skyrim runs. I played as a Nord for my first one, and then I think I played as an Argonian.
So the Altmers are the High Elves that I was thinking of, and then the Dummers are the Dark Elves, and then Bosmars are Wood Elves. There's Wood Elves, High Elves, and Dark Elves. It's interesting, though, that I know that there is dwarves somewhere in this. They're all wiped out or something like that. But you find
that's the thing
dwarven technology, the Dwemer, right?
Yeah, the Dwemer. In Skyrim, there's the whole thing with like finding their ancient technology.
Yeah. But you can't play as a dwarf, which always makes me sad. I really like playing as dwarves. There's, of course, the Orzamir, which I believe are...
Dark
one
orcs.
of these are... I think that... Yes. And they have a lot of strength. Their primary thing is strength. And I just remember I had a Morrowind character. There's these boots in Morrowind that were blinding speed, and you could equip them, and it gave you a 100% increase to your speed and a 100% increase to your blindness.
Oh, yeah.
And then I just had an orc with 2 axes, and he just put on the boots of blinding speed and just swung like crazy. But my Oblivion playthrough, so I beat the game with a Khajiit, and he was like a stealthy kind of Khajiit kind of guy. Because that's what I end up always like. I'm like, all right, time to play something, and then I'm like, now I'm playing a Khajiit that's a stealth character. Just kind of always end up with that. However, my recent one I was playing is a Argonian fighter, and my first thing I did was when I got out of that prison is I jumped in the lake and I just swam, because Argonians they can't drown because they're
right,
like amphibians, I guess. They could breathe underwater. So then I just like swam around a bunch of places, and I'm pretty sure I just like crossed the ocean and then went to some other, like across the lake, and I went to go somewhere else. But yeah, he's an Argonian fighter, very, very traditional.
I do like that the groups of people in Elder Scrolls are kind of divided amongst, so they're different races, but they're also kind of like subdivided to different groups. So there's the humans, which of course are like the Bretons and the Imperials, the Redguards and the Nords. But there is also the Mer, who are the elf folk. This is for Oblivion, it's the Bosmers, the Dunmer, the Altmer, but also the Orsmer, because the orcs are technically an elf race. But the Argonians, the Khajiit, are called the Beast folk, which yes. I just like that term.
Yes, I'm a big fan of the Khajiits, mostly because I also like I like cats. I think they're fun, and the first character I ever played in Morrowind was a Khajiit, so it's very much harkens back to my desire to just play the game Thief in all Elder Scroll games. Now, in regards to how Oblivion did, unsurprisingly, Oblivion sold well. It would sell upwards of 1.7 million copies by April 2006 and 3 million by January 2007.
I want to just put that quickly into perspective. The game came out in March 2006.
Yep.
It sold 1.7 million by April.
So here's how it works. I would say I would put money on that a majority of those sales when coming out in March to April were pre-release and pre-orders, and then like buying as they're going through. And then guess what happens between April and January? Christmas. And that's where you get your next big wave of purchases. Because that's really still how things happen, especially with games. I feel like, unfortunately, I don't know how other people do. Maybe, I don't know, write into us if you have different opinions about this. But with the rise of digital games, I don't get a lot of games for Christmas anymore. There's nothing to wrap. It's hard to give a gift. It's kind of, I don't know, getting a gift card is a nice gesture, but there's something special about unwrapping a video game under the tree, and that just doesn't happen anymore because games aren't, well, they're not primarily physical anymore. Players would go on to love the game, and it would hold up to their expectations, which I'm sure the VP of PR was happy about. OneUp.com gave it an A. All Games gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and GameSpot rated the PC version a 9.3 out of 10, and the 360 version a 9.6 out of 10. Probably because it ran better on a 360, ultimately. And by ran better, I mean you needed to have a pretty decent computer to run it, and not a lot of people had decent computers.
Right.
So there's a lot of people like me who were like, this game having trouble running, but 360 it ran fine because it was designed for it as well. People praised the visuals, the game design, the menus, and the action. Some criticism was found with the NPCs and their dialogue. People noted that there was a lot of repetitive dialogue that would contrast with higher quality voiceover work for other parts of the game, which is valid. It's one thing to get this like sweeping intro with Patrick Stewart and this whole structured intro that's like really great story and movie moment, and then getting out into the dungeon and having the guy like repeat 17 times the same thing to you in the city about like I would have been an adventurer like you if I didn't take an arrow to the knee or whatever that plagues Bethesda for everything, right? They still are plagued by that, and I guarantee you with whatever crap they're going to be shoveling out with the inevitable Fallout game that they're working on and the inevitable Elder Scrolls 6 that's going to come out, I guarantee you they're still going to have NPCs that are going to say weird stuff to you as you walk by. There are also famously a few audio flubs within the game that exist where even one, such as one of the voice actresses, repeats her line of dialogue due to having a bad take that's left in.
I heard that thieves broke into the Arcane University, the Imperial Legion compound, and the temple all on the same night. Wait a minute, let me do that one again. I heard that thieves broke into the Arcane University, the Imperial Legion compound, and the temple all on the same night.
Which makes the experience seem less immersive, but more real, I guess. There was also some criticism lobbed at Bethesda for the small DLC package that they released. And this, everybody, is when Horse Armor was created. Horse Armor was created for Oblivion. As the name implies, it added Horse Armor to the game at the cost of $2.50. And this was one of the first real non-value added additional thing that you could buy through the game. It was one of the first, if not most controversial DLCs at the time, and people felt this was ridiculous. We were okay with expansion packs and DLCs that were expansion packs.
Yeah.
So we were okay with expansion packs. We've always been okay with the expansion packs. Expansion packs have been going on for years and years and years. Baldur's Gate 2 had Throne of Ball. Pretty much it was a little bit cheaper than the first game, and it was great. And I loved buying it, and it's really part of the whole experience. Horse Armor, not really necessary. And for $2.50, it feels like you're just trying to take my pennies. And people felt the same way, and they felt that was ridiculous. There would be proper DLCs that would be released, such as the Knights of the Nine and the Shivering Isles. Both of them unique. Shivering Isles, I think, is a bit more of a longer, a more impactful DLC than Knights of the Nine, as the Shivering Isles is a crazy guy that you have to help with navigating his dream world and stuff. More recently, Oblivion was remastered and re-released. Not its first re-release, but it would be his first remaster in 2025, which gave the game a full graphical overhaul and other gameplay improvements, and a sequel that we'll talk about in 300 episodes, Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, would be released in 2011. And that game would also go on to get re-released multiple times. The Oblivion Remastered is really good. I really, really liked it. I was really into it. I stopped playing it for a little bit. I was just thinking about maybe getting back into it because it was really nice. And it was one of the first games that I played on my new OLED monitor that I got, which is not new anymore. anymore. It runs at a good level for my computer. Some games nowadays that are coming out, my computer has a little bit of trouble keeping up with, especially when they bottleneck VRAM. But man, that remaster Oblivion is really good. It's a really good, beautiful looking game. There was moments where I had to stop and be like, oh yeah, this is good. So I recommend, if you really like Oblivion and you haven't checked out the remastered, I definitely would recommend picking that up, as it's a really good experience.
Well, that will do it for our Oblivion episode, celebrating 20 years of Oblivion. Great game. And be sure to check it out, either the original or I think, can you still pick up the original, right? They didn't delist it, right?
They might have.
Game of the Year Edition is still available. Game of the Year Edition is $15.99, available on Steam.
There's also the Game of the Year Edition Deluxe that they're selling for $19.99.
Yes, but I'm not sure what the difference is. Oh, I see. So Game of the Year Edition includes Knights of the Nine and Shivering Isles. Game of the Year Deluxe includes Fighter Stronghold Expansion, Spell Tome Treasures, Vile Lair, and Mehrunes Razor. It's all the smaller expansions. It's all those small DLC things.
It comes with horse armor, and it's $5 more. It'd be funny if it didn't come with horse armor.
I'm pretty sure, I think I was reading that Bethesda responded to the criticism by being like, we wanted to try something new. That was basically it.
They opened up a doorway that we have not been able to close ever since.
They sure did. To get into our retro rewind, Seth had me play a fantasy game, kind of. It's a medieval game. That was Chronicles of the Sword for MS-DOS, developed by Synthetic Dimensions in 1996 for Windows and PlayStation. It's a game where you play as Gawain, as in Gawain, one of the Knights of the Round Table. He's featured in Gawain of the Green Knight, which is a classic Arthurian legend. In this adventure, you are pretty young. You're a young Gawain. I think he's always pretty young in the stories, but he's like newly minted Knight of the Round Table. It literally begins with you being appointed by Arthur, and you're tasked with finding Merlin and defeat Morgana. It's an interesting game. It uses 3D pre-rendered graphics and environments that are incredibly dated. Everyone's kind of round and very odd looking. People's faces get weird and very exaggerated, and I found it to be just kind of boring. It was a lot of trying to figure out where to go without really clear direction, then trying to figure out what to do when you get there without very clear direction. I didn't really like it, and I decided I was going to just quickly look up some reviews to make sure it wasn't just me. But no, it wasn't just me. Apparently, no one liked it when it came out. In fact, all the reviews I read called it probably the worst adventure game ever made. Do I think it holds up? I don't think so. I think if you want to play some medieval adventure akin to an Arthurian legend, you can play Dragonsphere, which is also a adventure game available on MS-DOS and is much better than Chronicles of the Sword, and I think you'll have a better time playing it. Seth, next week I want you to play a game called Space Ace for the Super Nintendo.
Great. I'm looking forward to it. Zach had me play True Lies for the Sega Genesis, but I couldn't find it, so I played True Lies for the SNES, which I read reviews, they were the same game. It was developed by Beam and published by Acclaim, except on the SNES, which was published by LJN, and it came out in 1995. The game was also released on the Game Boy and Game Gear. In the game, you play as Harry Tasker from the movie True Lies, who is also played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And to be honest, I never have seen True Lies, but I really don't understand what was going on. And I also skipped all the cutscenes, so I didn't get any additional context. And I was just dropped down into a top-down perspective where you walk around the house and you shoot people. And you try not to shoot civilians who also kind of look like the bad guys, but they're not shooting you, and that's the difference. So I was just blasting everybody. I eventually got shot a bunch of times. You're allowed to die 3 times, and then the game just ends. And when the game ends, there's just a nuclear bomb that goes off, which without any context was just a little strange, because I was in a house with a pistol shooting people, and then I died a bunch of times, and then a bomb went off. And I was like, I didn't know a nuclear bomb was my entire, I didn't know I was that serious of a mission, but apparently it was. So there's that. And I got yelled at a bunch of times because I killed a lot of civilians. The SNES game plays okay. From what I've played and from what I've seen, it does play a lot like a lot of top-down shooters type games that are on the SNES or Sega Genesis from that time. And sometimes those get a little bit repetitive after a while. But it's a game, and for a tie-in game to a movie coming out in the 90s, it's all right. I didn't hate myself. However, I did read a review for the Game Gear, which I I didn't play that came out in GamePro, and it said the game isn't so much an entertainment vehicle as it was a torture device, as the game did not get downgraded so well for the Sega Game Gear and had a number of slowdown issues, and there was like issues where there was weird sound effects that came through because of it going to the Game Gear, and the controls were bad on the Game Gear, and there's just a lot of other issues that just compounded the fact and made the game worse. So if you want to check this game out, I would check it out on the Sega Genesis, the SNES. And if you're not a true Wise fan, you probably could just give this one a pass and just move on. Next week, Zach, you can play Alien Logic for MS-DOS.
I will. Well, thank you everyone for listening to today's episode. If you have any memories playing Oblivion or any of the other Elder Scrolls games, you can let us know by emailing us at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. You can also let us know via our social media, Classic Gaming Brothers, CG Brothers Pod. Be sure to like and subscribe to us on YouTube, follow our Patreon, check us out, and also you can always find us wherever podcasts can be found, be it Podbean, iTunes, or iHeartRadio. That being said, I don't think I'm forgetting anything, but if I am, Seth, am I forgetting something?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's
right.